If you're anything like me, you've been inundated by ads by this company, OtO Lawn. They make a smart sprinkler system that promises to kind of solve all your watering needs when it comes to your lawn, your plants, anything in your yard. I get these ads every single day. They're very targeted towards me, and well, it kind of worked. We are in the middle of a complete renovation of our landscaping. We went all the way down to dirt throughout the entire thing, added a new driveway, new fence, lawn, plants, literally everything brand new. But with that came needing some sort of irrigation. I live in a very old area of town, so irrigation is not like a standard thing. And we got quoted $10,000 to put a very basic sprinkler system in for our yard. So instead, I opted to go the above ground route and make my own system there with various hoses and sprinkler heads. And for the most part, it actually worked pretty well. But inevitably, I got these patches in my lawn, which was very annoying. You just spend all this money on sod and then suddenly it's kind of dying. So I reached out to OtO to see if I could put this to the test and, decide if it's actually worth it. So I'll say this up front, you'll get an idea of how I feel about these. OtO sent me 2 of these to test out, and I ended up buying more because I loved them that much. This thing, it's not a scam, it's not some, random Instagram ad. It actually works, and I like it a lot. Okay, so real quick, if you don't know what the OtO sprinkler is, basically it's a smart sprinkler that can more efficiently water wherever you need. Typically with a traditional sprinkler system, you have multiple different heads all across your yard, and it just sprays as much as possible to get the maximum coverage. The goal here is to make sure you don't miss any spots. And well, it works, and that's what we've been using for years, right? But it uses a ton of water, and it is indeterminate. It's not going where you need it to go, it just sprays everything. Whereas the OtO sprinkler uses those smarts to directionally point the water where you want it to go. So this means you can water more effectively, use less water, and because it just needs to connect to a hose for it to work, you can get up and running in minutes. It's super easy. And in my use case, it totally works. It took my lawn from looking like this with these ugly brown patches where I was missing some watering, and it turned it into this in just a few months. The way I'm using this is for 3 basic areas. I have my front yard and backyard lawn. I have plants that are all around, that need watering. And then I have garden boxes where I wanted to see if this would work. And well, spoiler alert, it does work. So I have 3 of these units around my yard, and those are covering all of my watering needs and doing it very well. Now, along with watering, there is also slots inside where you can attach different solutions that OtO sells, like fertilizer. There's an anti-odor for like if you have pets, it can spray that onto the lawn so it doesn't smell. There's insect repellents that you can spray. There's plant food, and these can all be, inserted into the OtO itself and automatically sprayed onto the areas that you want. It's a pretty clever solution. And the way this all works is very simple. The unit itself has a sprinkler head that can rotate 360 degrees and can shoot 30 feet in every direction. Again, just coming from a regular water hose, you just need 50 psi of pressure on that hose, but if you have that, you'll get that full 30 feet. And for power, you could hardwire it if you wanted to. It comes with a cable, but the best way to do it is to make sure it's in a sunny location because it has a solar panel on top, and this is how it will power everything. And then to actually set it up is where you go into the app. You can set up different zones of where you want it to water. You can tell it if you want it to use solution or not, and you can set up different schedules for when you want it to water. And once it's all set up, you're kind of done. You don't have to think about it anymore. Okay, so that is the OtO lawn sprinkler, how it works. But how does it actually work? Like, is it worth it? And I have to say, for me, I absolutely love this thing. I'm sold. Usually you see an ad or you find a new product and you're questioning if it works. I was the same way. This one came in, it actually delivers. But it's not perfect. There are a few things about it that at least give me pause or I wish could be updated or changed. I'll talk about those in a second. But first, what I love about this is that the, efficiency claims of watering where you want and not watering where you don't want, that's actually true, and it works really well. When you go into the app to set up different zones, you have different options. You can set up an area, which would be great for like a lawn. So you can set up a perimeter and it'll water everything inside that perimeter. Or if you have single places where you want to water, you can just do a spot watering. Or if there's like a line of plants along a wall, you can do a line. I use each one of these methods, and it's super easy to set up. So for the lawn, I did a perimeter setup. It's pretty simple. And then it will just go back and forth and spray it with the amount of water that I want. But what really sold me is my planter area in front of my house, because here I wanted to have, my basic design here was to have a bunch of different plants that were all over the place. Right now they're pretty young and small, but eventually the goal is for them to grow big and create a flower and grass wall that hopefully looks really good. But because the plants are scattered kind of all over the place, it's a pain to water them effectively. But with the spot feature, I can directly point the sprinkler head of the OtO to each plant and give it water directly. Now, this is great for a few reasons. One, I'm watering it directly, so it gets all the water that I'm giving it, but also it means I have less weeds in the area because I'm not just spraying the whole area with water. The in-between plant areas are kind of dry, but the plants themselves have all the water they need. That is a really nice thing, and it works extremely well. Now, I also use the line feature for my garden bed. I have a row of tomatoes there, and I just kind of set a line of where those are, and it just waters that daily. I was a little worried about splashing water everywhere. You know, tomatoes are susceptible to leaf rot or disease if the leaves are wet. And well, that has not been an issue. I messed around with different placements, eventually just kind of attached it to one of my garden boxes, and it works well. And my tomatoes are growing, my jalapenos are coming in. This is a thriving garden that is being watered just with OtO. So even though it's OtO Lawn, it doesn't have to be just for your lawn. It works for many different applications. Also, I have these set up in different ways too. The setup is super simple, and I like how effective it is. I have one attached to my fence, and this is what waters all my plants in my backyard. I have one staked into the ground in my front yard for the front yard lawn. And then I have one attached to the garden box like I mentioned. This thing is pretty versatile, and you can attach it really anywhere. The mounting plate that it comes with can either get staked into the ground, or you can screw it into a post, and whatever you choose works. Now, some things I was worried about that ended up not being issues. One, the solar power. I was worried that it would work for like a week and then die, and it has full charge, and it's been out there for over a month, and that has not been an issue whatsoever. So as long as it's in a sunny place, it recommends at least 3 hours of sun a day. As long as you get that, it seems like it's going to run forever. So that is really good. I was also worried that because it's in my yard, that it would not be able to connect to the internet or have some type of connection issue since it's outside of my house, and it wouldn't effectively run on the schedule. But that hasn't been an issue either. It runs on time every single day. And I was also worried that it wouldn't be accurate and that it would maybe misremember or not spray exactly where I told it to. And while that does actually happen, but it doesn't happen in the way you might think. And that kind of leads into some of my issues or some of my small gripes with this system. And, you know, going back to that precision element, if you live in a windy environment like I do, well, if it's shooting water 30 feet away across the yard, if it's a windy day, that water is going to be blown to a different direction. And I do live in a windy environment, and it happens very often. It's actually pretty annoying. So if there is like any wind, I just don't run this thing. Now, luckily, OtO kind of knows this. And if you go into the settings, you can set a wind parameter. So if it's over a certain amount of wind in the forecast, it just isn't going to run it. It'll save it for a later time. I believe the default is 25 miles per hour for that. But honestly, I would set it much lower. If it's like a 10 mile per hour wind, I would probably lower that down to there because it just doesn't work well in the wind at all. So what I actually ended up doing instead was setting it to run in the very early morning so that I wasn't having water, you know, sitting on my lawn and, you know, throughout the night and possibly getting some sort of fungal infection or something like that. I didn't want that. So I do it early in the morning around 3 a.m. so that the sun will come up relatively soon. But it's also way less windy at night, at least where I live. So I would just kind of think about where you live, how the weather conditions are, and, you know, kind of work around it. And so far, after doing that change, hasn't been an issue at all. Now, another small complaint, not really a complaint, but just something to think about, is the solutions that they sell. This seems to be a pretty big part of the business model here, since this would be a recurring investment that you'd be making into them. They seem like perfectly fine products. They're regular fertilizers for the most part, but it depends on your situation, right? Like for me, I'm doing a very specific fertilizing schedule, so I wouldn't be using what OtO has, not yet at least. Or maybe there's a specific, insect repellent that I love using that's a liquid. It would be nice to be able to put that into the OtO with my own solution or my own fertilizer, whatever I personally use. That would be great to see. Now, the last worry I have is not really exactly OtO's fault. This is just kind of the nature of the business, but this is a smart tech product with different parts in it, and it connects to the internet. It has an app. So theoretically, in the future, if something happens to OtO, maybe they go out of business, unfortunately, or maybe they get bought by a different company, or they just switch directions, whatever might happen, is this thing going to just stop working one day because OtO doesn't exist anymore? I mean, this theoretically should work for years to come, but do you need that infrastructure in the back end? It is a worry that you would have to think about. And also, it's a very specialized product, so if there is something that breaks in it, I can't exactly run to the hardware store and buy parts for it like I could with my regular sprinkler system. So this is definitely something different. It's not your run-of-the-mill sprinkler. There's more to it than meets the eye at first. That honestly is probably my biggest hesitation overall, is that it's rather expensive for what it is, although I do think the price is worth it for what it's giving you, especially compared, like I said, to the price of a full-on sprinkler system. But you want to make sure that investment is worth it and it's going to last a long time. So far, I haven't had any issues. I've never had anything break or anything like that, and hopefully that will continue on into the future. But it's a new company, and you just never know what happens with these things. It's honestly one of my biggest issues here. Now, if you do want to pick one of these up, all the info is down below in the description, and if you use my link and my code, you get $25 off your order, which is great. I think if you are in the market for a product like this, maybe you need a new irrigation system, or maybe you have that one area in your yard where you just need a little bit more water, and this would really help. I'd say give it a shot. The Instagram ads were not a lie. This thing is great, and I'm glad I have it.